My wife looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're not my husband." And the worst part is she didn't blink once. No hesitation, no crack in her voice, nothing. Just cold, flat certainty, like she was reading a line she'd rehearsed 1,000 times in the mirror. We were standing in our tiny apartment living room, the one we'd spent 2 years slowly turning into a home with thrift store furniture and mismatched mugs, and suddenly it felt like I'd broken into a stranger's house by mistake. I laughed at first because what else do you do when your wife says something that insane? Ha ha, very funny, Layla, I said, but my voice already sounded thin even to my own ears. She didn't even look annoyed. She just tilted her head slightly like a doctor examining a patient and repeated it slower, each word like a knife. You are not my husband. And then she stepped back like I was contagious. The thing you need to understand is that nothing about our day had been weird up until that moment. We'd had breakfast together, argued lightly about whose turn it was to do the dishes, texted each other memes while we were both at work. She'd sent me a photo of a plant in a shop window with the caption, "Can we adopt this little guy?" I replied, "We can keep plants alive, babe. We can barely keep ourselves alive," and she'd spammed me with crying, laughing emojis. Normal. Completely normal. But when I walked in that evening, everything was off. The curtains were drawn, even though she loved letting light in. The TV was off, even though she always had something playing in the background. And my wife, my Leila, was standing in the middle of the room with her hands clasped in front of her like she was waiting for bad news. I dropped my backpack, kicked off my shoes, talking about traffic and how my boss was being a pain, and she didn't say a single word. She just watched me, eyes following every move like she was trying to match me to something in her head and failing. "You okay?" I finally asked. "Did something happen?" That is when she inhaled, slow and deliberate, and delivered the sentence that flipped my entire reality upside down. "You're not my husband." My brain did that thing where it tries to find the most reasonable explanation first. Maybe she'd gotten bad news. Maybe she was having a panic attack. Maybe she'd been crying and I hadn't noticed. My eyes scanned her face automatically, the way you do when you love someone and you're searching for clues, but there were no tear streaks, no red nose, no shaking hands. If anything, she was too calm. "Layla, it's me, it's Daniel," I said, walking toward her with my hands half raised in a stupid peace gesture. "We've been married 3 years. We met at that stupid HR training. You spilled coffee on my laptop and I told you I'd sue you for emotional distress." I tried to smile at the memory. She blinked slowly. "My husband's S name is Daniel," she said calmly. "But you were not him." That S when my stomach actually dropped. Like, physically, I felt it. I laughed again, but this time it came out like a bark. "Babe, if this is about the trash or something, I swear to God, stop calling me babe," she snapped, and that was the first crack. Her voice rose half an octave, clipped and sharp. "Stop talking like you know me." "I am your husband," I said, speaking carefully now like I was trying not to spook a wild animal. "We live here together. You sleep on the left side. You kick in your sleep when you have nightmares. Yesterday you told me my beard looks like a discount lumberjack starter pack. We were literally paying off that couch behind you." "You sound like him," she interrupted. "You even move like him, but you were not him." "Then who am I demanded, a bubble of anger rising through the fear because there is only so much crazy you can take before your ego steps in. "A replacement," she whispered. "An actor. They put you here so I had to stop asking questions. Who? Who is they?" I asked, and that cess when I realized this wasn't just some weird prank or a random fight. This was bigger, darker. Something had already been happening without me noticing. She looked toward the door, then toward the window like she was checking for cameras. Then she lowered her voice until I had to lean in to hear her. "I know what you're doing," she said, "and I want to play along. The police are on their way." I laughed again, but this one died in my throat because, as if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Not a friendly knock, a heavy, deliberate pounding that made the door rattle slightly. My pulse spiked. Layla didn't flinch. "That will be them," she said quietly. "I already told them there's an intruder pretending to be my husband." I froze. You have to understand how terrifying it is to suddenly realize that every single thing in your life that felt solid could be yanked out from under you with one sentence and one phone call. Intruder. That is what she'd called me. I walked to the door on legs that felt like they weren't entirely mine and opened it to find 2 police officers standing in the hallway. One man, one woman. They both looked tired in that way that says they'd rather be eating dinner than answering domestic calls. "Evening, sir," the male officer said, eyes scanning me quickly. "We got a call about a possible intruder." I opened my mouth to explain, but Layla appeared beside me so fast I didn't even see her move. She clutched the female officer's sleeve like a scared child. "That S him," she said, pointing directly at me. "He broke in and he wanted to leave. He keeps calling me his wife." The female officer's eyes shifted from her to me, then back, measuring, calculating. Sir, can we see some ID? The male officer asked. And maybe step into the hallway for a second? My hands were already shaking as I fumbled for my wallet. This is some kind of misunderstanding, I said quickly. I'm her husband, Daniel Cole. We've lived here for 3 years. My name S. on the lease. No, it isn't T, Layla cut in. Her voice was steady. Too steady. I already checked. The lease is in my father's name. I live here alone. And that sentence literally made the hallway tilt for a second. What? I said. That is not true. We signed. And then it hit me. We hadn't signed. I'd just assumed. She'd moved in first before we got married. Her dad helped with the deposit. When I asked if we should get my name added later, she'd squeezed my hand and told me, "We'll do it when we renew, baby. Too much paperwork right now." And he never pushed it. Why would I? You don't expect your spouse to weaponize the lease against you one day. The officer took my ID, glanced at it, then looked back at Layla. Mayam, is this your husband or not? He asked, flat and direct. The world genuinely held its breath in that moment. Layla's eyes met mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw something there. Fear, regret, the old softness I recognized, but then it vanished like someone had flipped a switch in her brain. I've never seen this man before in my life, she said. The words hit harder than any punch. The female officer's hand hovered just a little closer to her holster. Okay, she said slowly. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us into the hallway while we sort this out. You can't be serious, I snapped, panic finally forming into anger. Look at our photos, our clothes, the toothbrushes in the bathroom. My mail comes here. Ask the neighbors. Ask the landlord. Ask literally anyone we will, the male officer said, voice firm. But right now we need to separate you both while we figure out what is going on, all right? I stepped into the hallway because I didn't want to escalate things, because I still believed that reality would win out if I just stayed calm and rational. From the hall, I could hear their voices as they questioned her inside. Do you feel unsafe? Has he threatened you? Do you know how he got in? And my wife, the woman who used to hold my face in her hands and call me my safe place, answered calmly. He has been watching me. I think he has been following my real husband. He knows things he shouldn't know. I woke up and he was just here. She started adding details, small, precise, believable lies that twisted our life together into something sinister. How I insisted we keep the curtains closed because I was paranoid about people looking in. How I hid my phone when she walked in the room. How I didn't let her see my ID or passport. All of these little things, which in reality were just normal couple stuff, got rearranged into a narrative about control and obsession. And the worst part is, if I'd been the cop, I might have believed her too. She sounded that convincing. When they finally let me back in to hear my side, I was already at a disadvantage. I tried to explain where we met, our wedding, the way her nose crinkles when she laughs, the scar on her left knee from when she fell off her bike as a kid. He knows a lot, the female officer said to Layla, watching her carefully. Is any of that true? Layla shrugged, eyes downcast now, playing the role perfectly. I post a lot on social media, she said softly. Anyone could know those things. Show them our wedding photos, I snapped, grabbing for my phone like a drowning man reaching for a life raft. But when I opened the gallery, my blood ran cold. The folder labeled wedding was empty. Actually, not just empty, gone. Deleted. Every photo of us together, from the first selfie in that crappy cafe to the honeymoon sunset, was gone. My hand actually shook. I scrolled frantically, but the story was the same. Couple pics, gone. Videos, gone. All that remained were random screenshots, memes, a few food photos. They were there this morning, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. I swear they were there. She must be, sir, the male officer interrupted. We're not here to investigate missing pictures. Right now, the issue is that the legal tenant of this apartment says you were trespassing. The legal tenant, I repeated, the phrase tasting sour on my tongue. She's my wife. Sir, she's saying she doesn't know you and she feels unsafe, the female officer said, crossing her arms. At this point, we can either remove you peacefully or we can escalate this to trespassing and potential harassment. Which way do you want this to go? I looked at Layla. At the woman ID held through panic attacks. The woman whose hair ID braided on lazy Sundays. The woman ID promised to love in sickness and in health. She wouldn't even look at me. Please, don't let him stay, she whispered to the officers. I'm scared. The word scared hit like a verdict being read. That was it. In the eyes of the law, I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a threat. They escorted me out, not handcuffed, but close. I was allowed to grab my backpack, my laptop, my wallet. When I reached for the framed photo of us on the shelf, the one my sister had printed and gifted us, the female officer gently shook her head. Leave that, she said. It belongs to her. It is me, I said weakly, pointing at the man in the photo. That S, literally me. How can it belong to her more than me? Sir, she repeated, leave it. They walked me all the way down to the street, making sure I didn't try anything. The male officer handed me a card. If If you feel this is some kind of mistake, you can talk to a lawyer, he said, that practiced sympathetic look on his face. But for tonight, Dante come back here, all right? If she calls again, it won't just be a conversation. Can I at least call her later? I asked, my voice breaking on the last word. That's up to her, he said, but I'd strongly recommend you give her space. Space. As if this was some minor marital spat and not my entire life being rewritten against my will. They drove away. I stood there on the sidewalk like an idiot with my backpack and my laptop in my hands, staring up at the window that was ours just that morning and now apparently wasn't it. The curtain shifted slightly. For a second, I saw a shadow I thought might be her, but then it was gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I grabbed it like it was a lifeline. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Hello? An unfamiliar man's voice spoke, calm and careful. Daniel Cole? Yes, I said too quickly. Who is this? This is Dr. Shaw from Riverside Psychiatric, the voice said. I believe your wife gave you my card last week. I understand you may be experiencing some confusion about your relationship. If you come in tonight, we can talk about options before things escalate further. I almost dropped the phone. Psychiatric, options, confusion. And that S when it clicked. Not all at once, but in fragments, the last few weeks. The little things I noticed and ignored. The late night calls in the bathroom she brushed off as mom being dramatic. The way she'd gotten strangely quiet whenever her father called. The tension after she'd visited her family alone for the first time in months. The new therapist she'd mentioned saying, I think it might help. For both of us, after everything. The pamphlet ID seen on the kitchen counter last week that said, when delusions take over, supporting loved ones who can TC reality, which she laughed off as for work. And now a psychiatrist calling me directly, as if I were the one who'd lost touch with reality. I hung up without saying another word. Because in that moment, standing on the sidewalk outside the home I was suddenly banned from, I realized something terrifying. Either my wife had genuinely lost her mind and believed I was an imposter, or someone had convinced her to pretend I was. And either way, I was suddenly the crazy one in everyone else's story. And I had no idea why. I didn't sleep that night. I crashed on my friend Ethan's couch, staring at the ceiling like it held subtitles to my life that would finally explain what the hell was going on. Ethan is one of those people who thinks everything can be solved with beer and video games, but even he shut up pretty fast when I showed up at his door with a backpack and a police card. Dude, what? Was all he could manage at first. I tried to explain, but every time I said the words out loud, my wife says, not her husband? They sounded more ridiculous, like some clickbait story you scroll past. I pulled out my phone, scrolling obsessively through my gallery like maybe the photos would magically reappear if I wanted it hard enough. Nothing. It was like someone had gone in and surgically removed every digital trace that Layla and I had existed together as a couple. On Instagram, my tag history with her was gone. On Facebook, our relationship status was mysteriously set back to single and the married to Layla Khan line had vanished. Our wedding album, which her cousin had uploaded and tagged us in, now showed only her. I was literally cropped out of my own wedding photos. Okay, that S actually insane, Ethan muttered, leaning over my shoulder. Did she block you or something? Blocking doesn't delete my existence from reality, I snapped. But the truth was, I didn't know what blocking could or couldn't do on every app. All I knew was that it felt like someone had hit Control Z on my entire marriage and the only copy of it left was in my head. Could your accounts have been hacked? Ethan asked. Maybe this is like some long con identity theft thing. Why would an identity thief go to court over the lease on my apartment? I shot back. Or call a psychiatrist on me. I opened my email, hoping for something normal. Newsletters, spam, anything to anchor me, but my stomach flipped when I saw the subject line at the top. Initial consultation psychosis support options. It was an email sent to Layla from that same Dr. Shah, CCing me. Dear Mrs. Khan, it read, following our preliminary discussion about your husband's fixed delusional belief that you are his spouse, I recommend you encourage him to attend an evaluation as soon as possible. My eyes skimmed the rest, phrases jumping out like landmines. Identity misperception, paranoid narrative, refusal to accept reality. It was carefully worded, clinical, and completely upside down. They were describing me like some man who'd become obsessed with a woman he wasn't actually married to, who'd built a fantasy relationship in his head, who needed help transitioning back to reality. My chest tightened. Layla had planned this. This wasn't a sudden break. Weeks, maybe months. That's how long she'd been laying the groundwork to make sure if I ever protested, I'd sound crazy. Okay, you need a lawyer, Ethan said, like yesterday. With what money? I snapped. Most of our savings are in the joint account, and I have no idea if that S joint anymore in the eyes of whoever is rewriting my life. My name's not even on the goddamn lease. That stung especially hard because I thought we were partners. Real partners. We had those late night talks about equality and independence, about not repeating her parents' mistakes. She told me how her dad made every financial decision, how her mom never even saw the bills. "I'll never put you in that position," she said once, tracing circles on my chest. "We'll do everything together." 50? 50? ID believed her. Now I was realizing the signatures ID never seen, the documents she'd handled because it is just boring paperwork, babe, were exactly where my reality had been quietly rewritten. The next day, I did the only thing that made sense to me. I went back to the apartment while she was at work. I still had my key. If anyone asked, I'd say I was just getting my things. If I was trespassing, then at least I was doing it for a reason. The hallway felt different already, like it belonged to someone else. Our doormat was gone. The little brass DL hook weedy hung for our keys was missing. In its place was the old bland hook that had been there when she moved in. My key still turned in the lock, though. The door opened with the same soft creak, the same smell of her jasmine hair oil and my cheap coffee. For a second, my heart jumped home. Then I stepped inside and realized, no, not home, not anymore. Every photo of me was gone. Every single one. The framed wedding picture on the shelf, replaced with a landscape print. The fridge, which used to be covered in our Polaroids and stupid magnets we bought on trips. Empty. The walls that used to hold our memories were now bare or filled with new art I'd never seen before, as if she'd been in a rush to erase the outlines where something used to be, but there were traces she'd missed. A hoodie of mine crumpled behind the couch cushion, a receipt from our last grocery trip with both our club cards listed, a tiny scrap of washi tape on the wall where one of our photo strings used to hang. I grabbed what I could. My clothes, my laptop charger, a drawer full of random cables and documents. In the bedroom, my side of the closet was empty, but she hadn't thought to check under the bed. That S where I found the shoebox. Not a dramatic secret letter kind of shoebox, just a dusty Adidas box with a strip of duct tape over it that read, "Old crap" in her handwriting. Inside were things we'd both forgotten. Ticket stubs, an old set of keys from our first place, a dried flower from the bouquet ID given her on our first anniversary, and beneath those, folded neatly, was something she definitely hadn't meant to leave behind. A spiral-bound notebook. The first page had my name written in her handwriting. Daniel things he wanted to understand yet. I sat on the floor, heart pounding, and flipped it open. The first few pages were harmless. Budget plans, lists of things we needed to buy, ideas for trips we'd never gotten around to taking. Then the tone shifted. Dad called again. "Wants to meet Daniel? I keep putting it off. He won TI like that. I chose my own husband. Mom says I have to stop acting like I am American. Says I forgot who I am. Says I'll come crawling back when life humbles me." Dad offered to help with the lease. I said I didn't need his help. He reminded me whose money paid my student loans. He always does that when he wants something. I swallowed hard. She'd never told me any of this. She'd always brushed off questions about her family with a joke or a quick change of subject. It is complicated, she'd say. We were fine. They were just old school. I'd assumed that meant strict curfews, modest clothes, marriage pressure. I hadn't realized it meant her father owning her life on paper. I kept reading. They want to meet him. They keep asking if he is one of us. I told them it doesn't matter, that I love him. Dad said love is a Western disease. He said if I don't want to bring him for dinner, he'll come here. Well, I don't think he's bluffing. I'm scared. That word showed up over and over again, underlined, circled, scared, scared, scared. My wife, who always mocked horror movies because nothing scares me more than student loan debt, had been terrified for months and hadn't told me. The more I read, the more a picture formed that I didn't like. A man I'd never met who controlled everything, a woman caught between two worlds, and a relationship being squeezed slowly from the outside until something snapped. Then I hit the page that made everything inside me go cold. Met with family friend today, she'd written. Dad has arranged for me to talk to this counselor who helps girls who've been brainwashed by Western culture. He thinks I am in a cult. The cult is normal relationships, I guess. Counselor says sometimes people attach themselves to fantasies when real life feels too hard. Says sometimes women imagine they remarried when they were not. Says dad knows someone that happened to. Says if I play along, they can help him see reality. I don't want to trust any of them, but they know where we live. They know where I work. They keep hinting that they can fix this one way or another. Dad said, if you want to undo this mistake willingly, we'll have to find other ways. I flipped the page with shaking hands. If anyone ever reads this, I need you to know. I know who my husband is. I know what is surreal, but they were planning something. They were talking about getting the marriage annulled because I was not in my right mind when I married him. They keep using the word delusion. They want to make him the crazy one. My throat closed. I read on. Counselor says if I get doctors to document that he believes we were married when we were not, the court can nullify everything. Dad loves that idea. He's practically salivating. Says it'll save face in the community if I wake up from my fantasy. I asked, what if I don't lie? What if I tell them we are really married? Dad said, then we'll just deal with him. Another way, he didn't say how. He didn't need to, so now I am stuck. Either I pretend not to know my husband or I risk them doing something worse to him. They've done it before. Mom still whispers about my cousin who married the wrong man and then tragically died in a car accident the week after the wedding. No one will say it out loud, but everyone knows that car didn't crash on its own. I stopped breathing for a second. I thought Layla's family was just strict. I hadn't realized we were playing survival on hard mode. If I push back too hard, they'll come after him, she'd written. If I go along with their story, maybe I can protect him long enough for him to get away. Maybe if the world thinks he is just some random guy with a delusion, they'll lose interest in him. They can Tiana or kill a stranger. There's no honor in that. My vision blurred. The words on the page swam. I hate that I'm even writing this, she continued. I hate that I'm considering gaslighting the one person who has ever treated me like a whole human being. But I don't see another way. They are already erasing him. Dad said using his contacts to clean records, photos, tags. He calls it setting things back to normal. They think if they erase our proof, he'll start doubting himself. Then the doctors can do their thing. Then the court will listen. Paper trails matter more than feelings. So here it is. The plan. I pretend he has said not my husband in front of witnesses. I call the police. I act scared. I feed the story that he is confused, that he thinks we were married, that he won to accept reality. They document it. It goes in a file. Then, if they try to hurt him or make him disappear, there will be a record that the only connection between us was in his head. No motive. No honor to restore, just a random crime. That terrifies my father more than anything. He loves his reputation more than he loves me. He might be willing to sacrifice me. He wants to sacrifice his image. So I will look him in the eyes and tell him he is not my husband. I will break his heart so they don't break his neck. I closed the notebook and stared at the wall for a full minute, my brain whirring but somehow completely silent at the same time. My wife hadn't gone crazy. She hadn't stopped loving me. She was trying to save my life. And in doing so, she'd handed my identity to the people who wanted me gone. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard a key in the front door. Adrenaline shot through me like fire. I shoved the notebook into my backpack, grabbed the shoebox, and scrambled to my feet. Layla walked in carrying a grocery bag, stopped dead when she saw me, and for the first time since all this started, her mask slipped completely. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, slamming the door shut and locking it quickly like she was afraid someone would see us talking. "You get to be here, Daniel! So, I am Daniel!" I snapped, my voice coming out harsher than I'd intended. "Good to know." I was starting to think I wandered in from the wrong timeline. She closed her eyes for a second, shoulders sagging, then opened them again, and I saw it my Layla, not the calm stranger who lied to the police. Her eyes were wet. "You have to leave," she said, voice cracking. "If my father finds out you came back, this whole thing is pointless." I held up the notebook. Her face drained of color. "You read it," she whispered. "Every word," I said. "You were going to wait until after they buried me to tell me what was going on, or was I supposed to find out from my obituary?" "I was trying to protect you," she shot back, anger flashing now. "Do you have any idea what he is capable of? He still calls my cousin the accident, like she is a stain he scrubbed out of the family name instead of a human being. She cut herself off, pressing her lips together. "We can go to the police," I said, stepping closer. "With this, with your notebook, with everything. They can just... You saw how easily they believed me," she interrupted bitterly. "You think they'll believe the truth now?" "Hi, officer. Remember how I told you this man was delusional?" Surprise! I was lying to protect him from my extremely dangerous father who has everyone convinced he's a pillar of the community. "They'll lock me up and pat you on the head. Then we'll go around them," I said. "Lawyers, women, as shelters, CPS, whoever. That notebook is evidence." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think this is about one notebook? He owns the building, Daniel. He plays golf with judges. He donates to politicians. He didn't erase our photos by magic. He called in favors, and now he has a psychiatrist ready to testify you're unstable. He's building a case while we were sitting here arguing. So what, we just let him win?" I spat. "Let him erase me? Annul our marriage? Marry you off to some guy we never met so we can sleep at night?" She flinched. "That is the plan, isn't it?" I pressed. "That's what this is all for. Not just to save me, but to reset you, to put you back where he thinks you belong." She stayed silent, which was answer enough. "How long has he been planning this?" I asked quietly. "Since before we got married." "Since before I was born," she whispered. "He just didn't know your name yet?" For a moment, we just stared at each other in the middle of the living room that used to be our safe zone, surrounded by furniture that now felt like props in a bad play. "I'm not leaving you here with him," I said finally. "I don't care how powerful he thinks he is." "You already left," she said softly. "In their eyes, you were never here. That is the only thing keeping you alive right now. Dante ruined it because you suddenly found your backbone." That stung. So what? I just go live somewhere else, pretend we never happened? Let them rewrite both our lives? No, she said, and there was steel in her voice now. You go somewhere safe where he can reach you easily. You find a lawyer who doesn't answer his calls. You show them the notebook, but not yet. You let this play out a little longer so he thinks he is winning. And I stay here and play the dutiful daughter until I can blow this whole thing up from inside. That is insane, I said. You were talking about going undercover in your own life. Better me than you, she said. He want to kill me? I'm his favorite project. He'll just keep trying to fix me. You're a stain he wants to scrub out, and he doesn't flinch at blood. You're asking me to walk away from you, I said, voice breaking. After everything, after reading how much you love me and how much you were willing to deform that love to keep me breathing, you're asking me to just go. Asking you to survive, she said. So that when this is over, there's something left to come back to. I stared at her. At the woman who'd looked me in the eyes and denied me to my face. At the woman who'd written in her notebook like it was a time capsule for a future where the truth might matter again. Do you trust me? She asked softly. I wanted to scream no. I wanted to say, you just called the cops on me and deleted our wedding photos. Trust is not exactly thriving here. But the truth was, I did trust her. Not the version standing in front of the cops. Not the version nodding along to her father, but the one who'd poured herself onto those pages in shaky ink, who'd been terrified and still tried to find a way to save us both. I hate that I do, I said. Good, she whispered. Then listen carefully. Dad thinks I am fully cooperating now. He thinks I believe you are crazy. That's the only reason you're still physically okay. He needs my testimony to nullify the marriage cleanly. That gives us time. Time for what? To hit him where it hurts, she said. Not with tears or begging, with paperwork, with the same system he thinks he controls. She walked past me to the bookshelf and pulled out a thin folder I hadn't noticed before. I started this before everything went to hell, she said. I didn't know how long I'd have. I've been documenting stuff. Conversations, threats, financial control. I've been talking to a women's rights organization under a fake name. They gave me contacts, lawyers, journalists, people who donned like men like him. She handed me the folder. Inside were printouts, emails from her father pressuring her, bank statements showing how he'd rerouted her paychecks through an account he monitored, screenshots of him threatening to cut off her mother if she didn't fall in line. Take this, she said, and the notebook. Don, keep them together. If he finds one, I don't want him to find both, and Don to use them yet. Wait until he files something official, an annulment, a psychiatric petition, anything. Once he puts his name on a legal document saying we were never really married, it is not just family drama anymore. It's fraud. Then we use this. Use it how? I asked, my head spinning. To show that he's manipulating the system to control me, she said, to prove he's using mental health as a weapon, to prove coercive control. Lawyers eat that stuff up these days. They were starting to recognize it. You sound like you've rehearsed this, I said faintly. I have, she replied, in my head, every night, while you slept, while I was trying to figure out how to keep you alive long enough for us to fight back. I swallowed hard. And in the meantime, I asked, what do I do? Just exist? You prepare, she said. You talk to people who don't know my father exists. You build a version of our story that doesn't start with, so my wife says, I am not her husband. You make it about forced control, financial abuse, cultural pressure. They'll understand that before they understand our weird identity situation. And you? I asked. I do what I've always done, she said bitterly. I play the good girl long enough to gather more ammunition. I let them think they were winning, because men like my father always overplay their hand when they think they've already won. That is when they get sloppy. That is when we pounce. A car door slammed outside. We both froze. Her eyes flicked to the window. Yes, early, she whispered. You have to go. Now. I am not leaving you, I said automatically. If he finds us together, then everything we just planned is dead, she snapped. Do you want to be a martyr or do you want to be my husband? I hesitated. The front door handle jiggled slightly. Layla, Amanda's voice boomed from the hallway. Deep, confident. The kind of voice that expects doors to open before it finishes speaking. Open the door. I know you're home. Back door, she hissed, pushing me toward the kitchen. Fire escape. Dante, come back here. If you love me, you want tea. I grabbed the folder, the notebook, my backpack. At the kitchen door, I turned back. Say it, I blurted once. Before you go back to pretending I don't exist. Tears spilled over finally, cutting shiny tracks down her face. You're my husband, she whispered. You're my only husband, no matter what I have to say to them. The lock clicked at the front. I pushed open the back door, slipped onto the fire escape, and climbed down into the alley, heart punching through my ribs. As I hit the ground, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Shaw. I understand you declined to speak earlier. I strongly advise you to reconsider before more people get involved. I stared at the message, then at the notebook in my bag, then at the world beyond the alley where people were walking dogs and buying coffee with no idea that a man was being erased half a block away. Game on, I muttered and stepped into the street. If you've never had to prove you're married to your own spouse, consider yourself lucky. The legal system was not built for people whose biggest problem is my father-in-law is trying to retroactively delete me. The first lawyer I went to listened to my story, thumbed through the folder and the notebook, and then gave me the same look the cops had given me somewhere between skepticism and pity. So, let me get this straight, she said. Your wife called the police and told them you're a stranger. A psychiatrist is prepared to testify that you have a delusional belief about being married. And you have handwritten notes saying, actually, it's her dad who's crazy? That's one way to put it, I said, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. She sighed. Look, I'm not saying I don't believe you. I've seen some wild family control cases, but courts care about documents, not diaries. Right now, your name isn't T on the lease. The marriage license mysteriously can be located in the county records. Wait, what? I interrupted. They lost the license? She turned her screen so I could see. According to the system, you applied. You had a date scheduled, but the final filing is missing. There's no scanned copy, no record of the signed document. That is impossible, I said. We had a ceremony. We signed things. The officiant mailed them in. Did he, though? She asked. Was he a friend of the family? My stomach dropped as images flashed in my head. Layla's uncle introducing us to Uncle Saeed. He does weddings all the time. The casual way the man had joked about signing so many certificates his hand was going to fall off. The way he'd told us, "Don't you worry, I'll file everything. You just enjoy being newlyweds." Oh my God, I whispered. He never filed it. If he is connected to your father-in-law, he might have filed it under a different name, or not at all, the lawyer said. Either way, on paper, your marriage is currently in limbo at best, non-existent at worst. So, I really am just some guy in the eyes of the law, I said hollowly. Not necessarily, she said. We can petition to locate or reconstruct the record. There may be witness statements, photos with dates, social media announcements. Those can help. But I need you to understand something, Daniel. Your father-in-law started this war on his home turf. He's using the system he knows. If you want to win, we have to switch battlefields. What does that mean? I asked. It means we stop arguing about whether you remarried and start arguing about whether a powerful man is abusing his daughter and weaponizing mental health to control her, she said. Courts are starting to recognize coercive control, especially when it intersects with cultural pressure and gender-based abuse. Your wife's notebook is gold for that. So is this. She tapped a printed email where Layla's father had written, "If you insist on continuing this fantasy, Dante come crying to me when people get hurt. I will do what needs to be done." That is a threat, she said, veiled but clear. We can work with that. So, what do? I asked. We file first, she said. Before he does, a petition for a protective order for you and for Layla. We frame it as a case of family interference, control, and credible threats. We attach the diary pages that Dante mentioned you by name but describe the plan. We attach the financial records. We attach everything that makes him look less like a concerned father and more like an organized abuser. Will Layla have to back it up? I asked, because right now she is playing a part. We don't need her to confirm everything at the start, the lawyer said. We just need to raise enough red flags that the court takes this seriously and puts temporary orders in place. No contact, no sudden moves, maybe even monitors on any attempt to move her out of state or out of the country. It felt backwards, filing a protective order for a woman who was currently pretending I was a crazy stalker. But the alternative was sitting back and waiting for her father to decide the next move. And we already knew how that ended for at least one cousin. So we filed. The judge we got for the emergency hearing looked like she'd seen everything and believed nothing without evidence. Good. Our lawyer laid out the pattern. Control, threats, financial strings, the psychiatrist suddenly labeling me delusional only after her father got involved. She slid the diary pages across the table. The judge read in silence. They want to make him the crazy one, she read aloud. They think if they erase our proof, he'll start doubting himself. She looked up at me. Mr. Cole, did your wife know you had access to this notebook? No, I said, not until I confronted her. She started it for herself, not for me. I wasn't supposed to see it unless something happened. Unless what? Unless I needed to know why she broke my heart on purpose, I said. To save my life. The judge's expression didn't soften, but something in her eyes shifted. This is highly irregular, she said. Your wife has already made statements to law enforcement that contradict all of this. If she appears and denies the diary or says she wrote it under pressure. We know, my lawyer said. We are not asking for a lifetime order today. We're asking for a temporary one, just enough to stop any sudden moves. No travel out of the country for Mrs. Khan without court permission, no psychiatric holds initiated on Mr. Cole without a second, independent evaluation, and no contact from Mr. Khan to either party while we investigate? After a long, tense moment, the judge agreed. Temporary orders granted for 2 weeks, she said. We'll reconvene with all parties present. 2 weeks. 14 days where her father couldn't he legally drag her onto a plane or have me hauled into a psych ward with some signed paper. It wasn't too much, but it was the first time since this all started that I felt like we'd drawn any blood on our side. Of course, her father did not take it well. Within 2 days, my old number was flooded with messages from unknown accounts. Some were obvious relatives calling me a parasite, a manipulator, a white colonizer brainwashing their girl even though I am not white and no one seemed interested in that detail. Others were anonymous threats. You don't know who you're messing with. Accidents happen all the time. Paper want to save you when we know where you sleep. My lawyer told me to document everything. Screenshots, timestamps, IP traces where we could get them. The more he lost control, the more he showed his hand. Meanwhile, Layla stayed in character. At the follow-up police interview about the intruder incident, she repeated her story. I was a stranger who believed I was her husband. She'd tried to get me help. She was scared. But there were cracks now. When they asked if she'd ever seen me before the incident, she hesitated a fraction of a second too long. When they asked why she'd never reported any harassment before, she stumbled. He was harmless at first, she said. I thought it would go away on its own. My lawyer later told me those hesitations mattered. They showed she wasn't fully committed to the lie. Little human glitches in the script her father had given her. And then the article dropped. Remember that journalist Layla had been emailing under a fake name? Turns out I wasn't the only one she'd been feeding information to. On a Thursday morning, an investigative piece went live on a major site. Honor by any means? How families weaponize mental health to erase unwanted spouses. It didn't name us directly, but the parallels were unmistakable. An anonymous case study of a woman pressured to fake her husband as delusion in order to annul a marriage her family disapproved of. Quotes from therapists about coerced false reports. Legal experts talking about the rise in gaslighting by proxy, where abusers recruit professionals to reinforce their narrative. My favorite line. When the community believes the story that he was never really her husband, his disappearance becomes less a crime and more a sad, inevitable tragedy. Layla's father lost his mind. He put out a furious statement in the community Facebook group, railing against Western media attacking their culture, insisting no such thing happened in their city. He organized a meeting at the mosque to address harmful rumors, all of which just made him look more like the man described in the article. The day of the full hearing, the courtroom was packed. On one side, her family and half their community, whispering and shaking their heads. On the other, a handful of people I hadn't expected, teachers, social workers, advocates from the Women S organization Layla had contacted. Even Ethan in a wrinkled blazer he clearly hated. And then there was Layla, walking in between her parents, head covered, eyes on the floor. I hadn't seen her in person since that day in the apartment. She looked smaller somehow, swallowed by the fabric and the weight of everyone's expectations. The judge laid out the situation. Conflicting claims, a diary, a psychiatrist-esque letter, a father-esque blustery denials. Then she turned to Layla. Mrs. Khan, she said, using the name on the marriage application that may or may not be legally valid. You're at the center of this. I need to hear from you. Her father-esque lawyer objected immediately. Your Honor, my client-esque daughter is under considerable stress. She is not in a position to... She isn't exactly the position. The judge cut in. Sit down, counselor. Layla took the stand. I could see her hands shaking as she raised them to swear in. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. She looked away quickly. Mrs. Khan, the judge said gently, do you know this man? She nodded slowly. Yes, she said. A murmur ran through the courtroom. He is Daniel Cole. He is my husband. Her father exploded. He actually jumped to his feet and shouted, No, he's not. The judge banged her gavel. Sit down, Mr. Khan, or I'll have you removed. He sat, but I could see the vein pulsing in his neck. Why did you tell the police he was a stranger? The judge asked Layla. Tears filled her eyes. Because I was scared, she whispered. Of him? The judge asked. No, she said. Of what would happen to him if I didn't You could feel the air shift. Even people who'd come in convinced I was some manipulating outsider leaned in. Layla took a shaky breath. And then she did something I will never, ever stop being proud of. She told the truth. Not the edited, palatable truth. The raw, ugly, dangerous truth. She talked about growing up in a house where obedience was survival, where defiance was a death sentence. She talked about cousins who disappeared after marrying without permission. She talked about a father who believed his reputation was more sacred than his daughters' lives. She described the family friend counselor, the suggestions to frame me as delusional, the psychiatrist she'd been pushed to see. She admitted she'd called the police and lied because, in her words, I thought making him look crazy was the only way to make him unimportant enough to survive, her father's lawyer tried to discredit her, suggested she was influenced by radical Western feminists, suggested the diary was fabricated after the fact, suggested I'd coached her, that S, when our lawyer pulled out the ace I didn't even know we had. Your Honor, she said, with the court's permission, we'd like to play a recording. Turns out, Layla hadn't just been writing things down. She'd been recording some of her conversations with her father, little snippets here and there hidden on a cloud account under a boring file name. In one recording, you could hear his voice clear as day saying, "We'll tell them he's sick." Men like that always believe they were married when they were not. Everyone will sympathize. They'll say you're such a good girl for trying to help him. In another, the counselor's voice saying, "If we can get a record that he insists you remarried, even when everyone else knows you are not, the doctors will back us up." In a third, the kicker, her father saying, "Once the papers are fixed, he is nothing. Just a mistake you made while confused." After that, accidents happen. No one will ask too many questions. The courtroom went dead silent. Even his own lawyer looked pale. The judge's face hardened. "Mr. Khan," she said slowly, "you are aware that threatening harm against your son-in-law and attempting to fabricate mental health records is a crime, correct?" He sputtered, claimed it was just talk, a figure of speech, cultural misunderstanding. No one was buying it. By the end of the day, not only were our temporary protective orders made permanent, but the judge ordered an investigation into possible conspiracy, coercion, and fraud. Layla was granted independent legal representation. Her father was barred from contacting either of us directly or indirectly. And the marriage? The judge did something that shocked even our lawyer. This court finds sufficient evidence that a marriage ceremony took place and that any missing documentation may be due to interference by parties who stood to benefit, she said. Pending the outcome of the investigation, this court will treat the union between Mr. Cole and Mrs. Khan as valid for the purposes of protection and spousal rights. In other words, on paper, we existed again. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Layla had to move into a protected housing program for women leaving high-control families. I couldn't live with her, yet not while her father's friends still roamed the city. We had curfews, safety plans, secret routes. Our phone numbers changed twice. My photo ended up on a couple of community warning posts branding me as dangerous and unstable. Rumors spread that I bewitched her, that she'd turned against her own blood. Some days, the weight of being the villain in so many people's stories almost crushed me. But there were other days. There were the texts from unknown numbers that started. I saw the article. I think this might be happening to my sister. Can you connect her with your lawyer? There were the girls who showed up at the shelter where Layla was staying, clutching little notebooks with phone numbers written in code. There was the social worker who told us, "Since your case went public, 3 other women have come forward with almost the exact same pattern. Psychiatric records, family interventions, suddenly delusional husbands and wives." Layla started attending group sessions with other women who'd been labeled crazy for not submitting. She took notes. She started talking about organizing something more permanent. "Your diary started this," I told her once during a supervised visit at the shelter, sitting across from her at a table bolted to the floor. "You and your stupid habit of writing things down when you're mad!" She smiled for the first time in weeks. "You started it when you refused to believe I didn't know you," she said. "Most people would have walked away and accepted the narrative. You were annoying enough to fight it." "Annoying?" I protested. "That is what we are going with?" "My very annoying husband," she corrected, emphasizing the word like it was a victory every time she got to say it out loud in front of witnesses. The one who refuses to disappear. Her father didn't go to jail. At least, not right away. Men like him are slippery. He hired better lawyers. He cried on camera about misunderstood cultural practices. He claimed the recordings were edited. He leaned on his network to stall investigations, but his power cracked. People watched him more closely. Judges side-eyed his concerns. His name, once spotless, was now followed by an asterisk in every quiet conversation. "You know, the one from that case. He lost some contracts. Some donors quietly stopped returning his calls, and every time he tried to do behind-the-scenes damage, our lawyer slid another email, another text, another screenshot under a judge's nose. Paper trails can cut both ways. As for us, we rebuilt in fragments. We didn't move back into the old apartment. That place felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by the memory of me standing there while my wife erased me on command. Instead, when it was safe enough, we got a new place. One where both our names are on every document, where every bill is joint, where the landlord is a grumpy old woman who hates everyone equally and would never answer a phone call from a concerned father. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up half expecting to find police at the door, or to see that the photos on our walls have been replaced by landscapes again. Sometimes Layla catches herself dropping her gaze automatically when a man raises his voice, and then forces herself to look back up, to stare him down. Healing isn't a straight line. It is messy, and it comes with nightmares and awkward court dates and Thanksgiving dinners where we explain for the millionth time why we don't talk to her side of the family. But here's why I'm telling you all this. Not because I want sympathy, or because I think our story is the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone. I am telling you this because when my wife looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're not my husband," I thought the world had suddenly gone insane in a random, senseless way. I thought reality had just cracked. I blamed her. I blamed myself. I blamed some mysterious mental illness that had come out of nowhere. It wasn't random. It was strategic. It was planned. It was a weapon. And there are people out there right now who are being told their reality isn't real, that their marriages never happened, that their memories are fantasies, not because they're sick, but because someone powerful decided the truth was inconvenient. If you're watching this and any part of you is thinking, that sounds familiar, I need you to hear me. Write everything down, screenshot everything, save every email, every text, every weird comment that makes your stomach drop. Abusers love plausible deniability. They love whispers and raised eyebrows and concerned questions. What they hate are records, dates, times, patterns, and if someone you love suddenly does something that feels like a betrayal, pause before you decide they're the villain. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they be bought into the narrative so deeply they become the weapon. But sometimes, like my wife, they replaying a part they never auditioned for because they think it's the only way to keep you breathing. That doesn't make the hurt less. That night in our apartment still sits in my chest like a splinter. I can still hear her voice saying, "I've never seen this man before in my life." Sometimes when we argue now, when we have stupid normal married people fights about laundry or whose turn it is to cook, a little voice in my head still whispers, "What if she decides you're not her husband again?" And then I look at our wall of framed documents, the reconstructed marriage certificate, the joint lease, the court orders with our names side by side, and I remember what we fought for. Paper doesn't make a marriage real. We were married in every way that mattered long before a judge acknowledged it. But in a world where powerful men use paper to erase people, sometimes you have to fight them with their own tools. My wife once wrote, "They think if they erase our proof, he'll start doubting himself." They almost succeeded. For a few hours on that sidewalk, I did doubt myself. I wondered if I'd misremembered things, if I'd read too much into our life, if maybe I was the one who debuilt something in my head. That's how this kind of abuse works. It doesn't start with fists. It starts with questions, with, "Are you sure?" And that never happened, and everyone else agrees. So if you take anything from our story, let it be this. Trust your memory more than their narrative. Trust patterns more than performances. And when someone looks you dead in the eyes and tries to tell you you are not who you know you are, remember that their certainty doesn't make your truth any less real. My wife looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You are not my husband." Today, she looks me in the eyes and says, "I'm sorry I had to say that to save you." One of those sentences was a weapon. The other is a scar. We live with both. We build around them, and we make damn sure that anyone who tries this on someone else in our city finds out that the days of quietly erasing inconvenient husbands and wives are over. Because now there's a record. There's a network. There are people watching, and there's at least one very annoying, very stubborn husband who refuses to disappear just because a powerful man decided he shouldn't exist.